Hey guys, Janet here. Parents Never Give Up. I'm here with my daughter Avery. She's agreed to join me for this recording so that we can discuss something we've both dealt with from both our own perspectives: self-harm, suicide, suicidal ideations, mental health. And we're going to touch on a lot of different things in this conversation. We're just going to have a conversation, and hopefully we can support parents, children, youth everywhere, because I just got some sad news today from a really dear friend, and she found out that somebody very close to her lost his daughter yesterday to suicide. And those of you that know me, know my daughter, know my story, know that Parents Never Give Up is about supporting parents. How do we show up as parents to be present? And Avery and I have had our bumps in the road, but I'm so grateful you're here, Avery. So thank you for doing this with me. That sounds so cold, eh? But I'm really glad you're here because it hasn't always been easy. And I, you just, what does it feel like to you when you hear that somebody your age, like we're losing children left, right, and center? You've lost your share of friends.
It hurts. Like it weirds me out to think it could have been me. And but I'm grateful that it wasn't, because I just want to help people that are feeling like that to not get to that point. Like
I'm grateful it wasn't you too, kiddo.
Me too. And I watched a story the other day on YouTube, actually, of this dad who was saying, like, COVID killed my son, but not in a way you might think. And his
Wow.
son was 10, and his son was 10 years old, and I guess he was really anxious for not being in school. Like, that was kind of like, where he like got happy, and like his friends, and like burnt off a lot of energy. So his dad said, like, it was clear that his mental health was plummeting. I think he was 10 or 11, but he had broken his computer monitor, and his parents got mad and like told him don't do that again. He saved up, got another one, ended up breaking it like a couple days after, and hung himself, rather, because he thought he was gonna get in so much trouble. And that, like, just those small things, I feel like that, like.
So how would you talk to somebody in that case? And I don't mean to be disrespectful as far as that, what that family's dealing with, but you're saying 10 years old, 10 or 11, and we started on our journey together when you were 12 and you're 20 now. Yeah. So, I mean, 10, that's younger than you. That's mental health. He's feeling so bad that these parents in no way, shape, or form have the skills to deal with what they're facing now, but over a monitor, because he was so afraid to talk to his parents.
Yeah, exactly. And that was like what I dealt with, like, when I started self-harming. Like, it was just a fear of, like, oh my God, like, you build it up in your head, I feel like, that it's going to be so bad. It's going to be so much worse than it actually is. So you scare yourself out of wanting to talk to your parents, in a way, I feel like you scare yourself out of wanting to be honest with them.
Is it wanting to talk to your parent or talk to me or your dad? Or was it more like you didn't feel like you could articulate it properly? Or were you afraid to disappoint us? Like, is there something, like, for parents out there, like, there's words are so important. So, but kids at 10, you can't articulate, even when you were 12, 14, 16, when you're in the group homes, you can't articulate then what you and I talk about now.
Yeah, no, there's no way I could have. And like, for a 10-year-old, like, he was a gamer, so that was his whole, like, probably in his, like, 10-year-old head, like, that was his world, like, that was his hobby, and it got, like, destroyed, and he wasn't, I don't know, like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like, if he was dealing with all that mental health, he might have been, like, leaning towards that as a really big coping strategy without realizing it. And when that falls apart, like, you kind of go crazy, you know what I mean? So, and rather than, like, he was embarrassed, I feel like, he was really embarrassed and didn't want to disappoint his parents. And, like, it's just heartbreaking, even, like, thinking about that he saw that was his only way out. Like,
so because you and I have talked about this, and I did touch on it with you just before this, what we're going to talk about. So anytime you want me to say, that's enough, Mom, you say enough, Mom. So, but when you're in that situation, so you self-harm worse than a lot of people, but from my perspective, not knowing what self-harming was, it took me a while to realize that self-harming was different than suicidal ideations. But obviously there's something that could lead from self-harming to suicide, or from mental health to suicide. Or is it just really like, maybe there's something that the youth now are missing, that they're really like, that suicide, with all the gaming, all the technology, does suicide seem real? When you contemplate it, is it like really the end in your head, or is that really what you want, is the end? Like, no matter what, turn the TV off, shut my life down, or do you not even thinking it? I don't know. So I'm asking you honestly. And you know, I love
I
you,
don't
kiddo, and I'm so grateful
think
you're
I'm
here.
thinking that in the moment. Like in the moment, I think you're just focusing on so many negatives that like there is no positives to you. Like there's you just you. It's like you just feel like I feel like when I was in those moments, I felt like I had just failed everyone. Like I wasn't gonna be good enough. Like I was stupid. Like I just couldn't do like I don't know. You know what I mean? Like I feel like you're not thinking about like what's gonna happen after this. Like do I really want to do? Like you're not thinking about I don't know. Like I feel like you're not thinking about like everything
Is
that
there so
leads up
much
to it.
noise going on in your head, and I use like white noise or
Yeah.
something, and that you just can't even, like, you just want it to stop? Or
It's just, yeah, that and it's just like there's like just thoughts like constantly racing and they're like not good thoughts, like very like negative thoughts. And
right.
I
I
think
remember some
all
of the
that
drawings you did back then, and you said it was like a lot of birds in your head, like you couldn't get that noise out of there.
yeah. And I don't know, it's really hard to explain, I think like how
What would I have been, if anything? Like, was that part of where the self-harming started? Was that control? Like it was one thing you could control then when you were feeling those moments? Or I'm trying to ask, like, for other parents seeing this, like self-harming, I know you
yeah.
and I have both heard it from people that said, oh, that's a good way to cope. You know, I disagree with that. You may have your, you know, what your perspective is on that, but like self-harming is a signal. Would it not be that something else is going on?
I would agree with that. I do think that it is a signal that something was going wrong because before I even made my first suicide attempt, I was self-harming. So I think it's you trying to cope with those feelings without taking it that far. Does that make
Mm-hmm.
sense?
Yep.
Like I feel a lot of it came from I was suicidal when I was self harming, but it was a way to release that I wasn't actually like ending my life.
And for yourself in those moments, because we both know how you tried to do that. So,
Yeah.
and some of it gets twisted around too. Like some parents are very afraid, one, because there's a lot of shame that goes with it. There's a lot of shame when you were hurting yourself and I couldn't fix you. Like I couldn't make you, and I don't mean fix you like glue you back together. I meant I couldn't make you not hurt.
See, from my opinion, like I wouldn't. I don't think any parent should feel shame because of that because there's only so much someone can do. You can't read my mind. You can't read your kid's mind. You can't know what's going on in their head. And if they're telling you one thing and you can't read their mind. You know what I mean? Like you can't if they're telling you they're okay, if they're like, but you're still seeing like signs that they're not. Like you can only push so far, and it's up to like you have to like finally want to open up and talk about things. And
So that's a good point because there was a lot of anger back then too. Like we had a lot of people
yeah,
joining into our conversation and they were all well-meaning people. But your anger, my anger, out of fear, your anger maybe out of fear. But for a parent that sees their child cutting, you know, how else do you handle that? How else do you, you know, like we can go back to when that emergency room thing where you had that big cut and the doctor's like, so Avery, what do you want to do? And even you were like, ha ha ha, see mom? Like, you know, like it's almost like, but that cut could have been fatal, really. I think you
yeah.
know that too.
No, there was one time where it hit when I was living in group homes, I had actually hit an artery in my arm, like I nicked it, and that was the scariest moment of my life and all that. Like,
So at that moment, and I know these are difficult questions, so I really love
yeah,
you for answering them, kiddo. And we can talk after this. And I'm glad you're going away for the weekend and having a spa weekend because I really, God help me if this triggers you in any way, shape, or
no,
form.
like I might be weird when it comes to triggers. Like I find as long as I'm talking about it in a positive way, it doesn't trigger me. It's more when like I've had to cut out several friends off because of this because they don't respect my boundaries. Where if you're gonna vent to me about like your own mental health problems in a very toxic way, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Like there's a positive way to talk about your problems in a very negative way, which is very
So
like I
you
find
touch on
very
boundaries, like you establish boundaries
yeah.
with your friends, which is what I learned
Yep.
to do with you. I had to establish boundaries with you. And that took us a few years before I could even communicate. But I'm so glad, however it worked out, it did. And that's what I teach other parents is like start establishing these boundaries. But as a teenager, if you look back, what did you have the skills then? Like as a parent, how would I have shown you as a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 14-year-old? how do you establish those boundaries back then with those friends that you know darn well were toxic back then? Would you have been able to establish boundaries, or how, now that you could do it, and I praise you, Avery, that is amazing that you can, because I
I
know
think
who we,
my establishing boundaries with those friends would have been cutting them off. Like if I had gotten that mindset sooner, I think it was a mindset that I just couldn't, like I was dealing with so much trauma, and like trauma happened, and then before I could recover from that trauma, more trauma would happen, and it was just kind of like a cycle of that. So like that's how I ended up like developing complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which is CPTSD, which is from like reoccurring traumatic events. Like, and it doesn't have, it could be like the same abuse going on over and over again, or different abuses or different incidents. And like I think I was dealing with so much like trauma just built on top of each other from group homes and all that shit. And like it,
so your friends back then, because you had touched on like your friends now, they don't
yeah,
accept your boundaries, but your friends back then, did you feel like those boundaries, or that those friends, like if you had lost those friends, would that have made it worse? Would it made it better? Or did you
I
just
think it
couldn't
would
talk
have
about this stuff with them?
made it worse in the short term, but it would have made it better in the long term, because I think if I had lost a friend, like, you know, I'm just gonna say K, and you will know exactly who I mean. So it's the letter K. Yeah, and
Too many, Avery.
so
There's too many.
like with
Even I
her,
know of your
I think if I
friends.
had
Too many.
too many, yeah, and but no, so like that person,
Mm-hmm.
if I had lost her, I think it would have, yeah, it would have been very chaotic for me for like a couple weeks. I think I would have felt very, you know, like alone or like sad. But I think in the long run, it would have made me realize like, what the hell am I doing? Because like she was like the only influence I had at first that, aside from like I got into the self harming by myself, but I don't think I would have ever like, not ever, but I don't think I would have tried to smoke weed so young. I don't think I would have, don't think I would have actually gotten into hard drugs if like I hadn't tried them with her. I don't think, you know, I can't like guarantee
Right.
that, but like that's where
Well, there's
a
so
lot
many
of,
influences, right? So this, for
yeah,
context for people, this is all when you went from grade 6, which is in elementary school,
yeah.
and then you went into the grade 7, 8, which is in a high school.
It was
And
in the
then,
high school from grade 7 to 12. So I was hanging out with like the grade 10s and 11s, and I was in grade 7. So
right. And you were your own unique person and everything.
it was
But
because I was alternative, right? I was alternative, and I dressed very like emo, as people would say. So there wasn't anyone else in my grade that really like I fit in with. They were all in the older grades, because no one else my age had really like gone through that phase yet. So like I don't know. That's why I ended up becoming friends with them, was because they were just like the only people in the whole school that were like me. So
so we've had this, I've asked you this question before, and there is no going back. We both are fully aware of that. But if I'm a parent and I'm dealing with my child, how do I can recognize that. Like I had that feeling in my stomach, in my heart, like there was something, right? And I wasn't as open to it as I have the skill set to be now. But when you were going through all those things and the school is calling and we're going to the hospital, and we end up having to call crisis counseling, and now you're going in and out of group homes and nothing's working. What as a parent have I done since that you would have appreciated then, that would have been age appropriate, if we can say it like that, with all the cutting and
yeah,
everything? Like, what are you looking for from your parent? Or is the
I
parent
think
just there?
one thing that would have really helped me, and it might have been a little bit chaotic at first because it was anyways, but I think if I had gone to, I think if I had gone to zero a little earlier, or instead of group homes, I was placed in like a proper, even parent model, like something where like, I don't know, like where there was more of like a family feeling, where there was more of like a normal feel to the house, because being in group homes is what caused a lot of my mental health to get worse. I find like just the things I witnessed, like just like it was crazy. Like I've never like thought that could be legal. I don't even know. It was just insane there. Like it was
So
just
in the context of what we're talking, in the group home
yeah.
situation, you were allowed to choose to go to the group homes, right? So what
Well,
happens
yeah,
when you're 13 or 14 and now you get to be the boss? Does that affect something? Like where I'm I'm holding my part for it because it wasn't safer at home for you or for, for yourself. But then what do we do? But also in like group homes, okay, there's a bad alternative, right? But it's a reality for a lot of people. But I don't want to, like, if I have to redo this, let's say, I don't want to have to put you there again. How do we avoid that when you're at
I think
13, 14, you're getting these decisions, and hey, I don't blame you now, because shit, if I was 14 and somebody said, hey, you can go live there and you don't have to listen to your mom, which is basically what they told you, but correct me if I'm wrong.
One program I wish I had found earlier,
Okay.
because I think it would have made a big difference, because if I had maybe gone into it earlier, it would have had a bigger effect and I would have taken it more seriously. But CAMH, that hospital in Toronto, I think if I had been able to go there when I was just starting to go through my problems, that would have helped.
So,
and because it's so secure, it's far away from home. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like that would have been a big help. But
and if you found out you
cannot.
Yeah. So here in Canada, because we're both in Canada, we're in Ontario, you can't, there's no secure facilities, right? I don't think CAMH was fully secure. I'm not saying that to any parent.
It was, but if we would go for outings, right? So if you really wanted to, you could just leave. But I never did. I wasn't from Toronto. I was not just going to go wander the streets of Toronto.
Which is funny in hindsight, right? Because like Toronto's like the place to go in Canada. No offense, Montreal, but yeah. So for yourself, and so looking back, because you did have the sad opportunity, or it's not even an opportunity, that's so incorrect, and you can slap me for that later, but you have had a lot of friends kill themselves. You have. And it's horrible because I know them. Like, I know them. I've seen what you've had to go through. I mean, we came close. I think most people, you know it, that I've written your obituary, and that breaks my heart, but I had to do it to heal. And for parents that think they feel shame and guilt and vulnerable and worthless or numb or any of those are all signs that you have to trust, because something's going on with your children. Something's going on inside of you that you can feel. Whether you're adopted, genetic, whether you're the aunt, the uncle, anything like that. When somebody is under your care, you feel it. But in all those friends, what do you think prevented, like, what did you have that, thank God, kept you here? What kept you going in those moments? Because I don't know how many attempts you had all told, but something kept you going. And how, as a parent, do we nurture that in our children?
I think it's that no matter what, like, a big part of it I've noticed is, I think 2 out of 3 of my good friends who passed away from suicide didn't have good relationships with their parents. One of them was abused by her parents when she was a child and thrown in CAS and passed around foster homes and abused by almost every foster home, like sexually and physically. So she had a rough life. But Lucas too, like, his parents like weren't, his mom was insane and his dad didn't really know how to cope with him in a way. Like, had laid hands on him before, but
when you were talking to him, he had you. So we're going to try not to use names here, but he had you, but you were in no position to help him. So
no, and that was actually a really thing for me that I'm still kind of trying to heal from, is not blaming myself for that, because when we broke up, he went downwards, and 3 years later he was dead. So like that did mess with me. Like, that really took an impact on me, because like I was still friends with him up to that point. Like, I had him sleep over when Brady was there one day. Like, he was like, no matter what, like, I wanted to help him. I never wanted to see him like be that bad, because I knew how bad his mental health was. He had pretty bad schizophrenia and he used a lot of drugs, and like I just remember, like, I don't know, but his parents, with his relationship with his parents wasn't great. Like, neither was my other friends. But then this is where it confuses me, because I would say a stable relationship with your parents.
Because we weren't stable then. I would say you and I didn't have a stable relationship back then, right?
My third friend, she had a perfect, like, her and her mom got along so well. Like, they had their moments, obviously.
Okay, we all do.
But, like, she had a relationship with her, like me and you. So that's the part that, like, blows my mind. Is like, what did she, like, why did she do it? Like, I don't know. It's hard for me to, like.
Right. It's hard for any of us. So is there a bigger part of it past the parents and past the youth? Like, it's not up to you by any means to take care of your friends. It's sure. And if we as parents aren't doing it, because these children are dying, it's COVID times, I get it, but our children are still killing themselves, and there's going to be a fallout from these times, just like you said with what you read. But as a community, what do you need in that moment? Like, the police officers there, like the ones you've ran into, the ones we've met, social workers.
I have a I think I just wanted someone to, this might sound weird, but I think like you just want someone to give a shit, or you just want someone to stop you. Like there's been times where I've been on like the edge of a bridge and some random person comes and talks to me, and like it's like they could just tell something was off and they come and ask me if I'm okay, and like that has stopped me before.
Hmm.
Just knowing, like, because you feel like no one cares, you feel like you're literally at your end. Like, I don't know, like I've had that happen a couple times, or like even I've had good police officers like talk me down, and like that helps in that moment. I think you just feel so alone in that moment that you
So as a
can't really.
parent, my child's in my home. I feel something changing in my child.
Yeah,
I've seen the symptom, the self-harming, and then, there are those that say it's not suicidal, but, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. We're going to go with it could lead to it. It doesn't mean it is self-harming. There's people out there that just self-harm a little bit. They try whatever it is. But then there's also, you're trying to numb something. Is that fair with some of the
yeah,
cutting? And so if you've cut for a long time and you're a cutter, let's say, let's not say that's what it is. It can easily go south, correct? Like you even said
yeah.
earlier.
Like,
So
I
there's
would
that.
black
So
out. Yep, I would black out when it would happen, and like that blackout can lead to you nicking an artery. And if I hadn't lived in a group home, say I had lived by myself, who knows? Like who
true.
knows what would happen? Because
Who
it
knew
was.
group homes could be a blessing in some ways?
And because I remember I scared myself so bad that I ran out of the bathroom and got a staff. I scared myself. Like I was like snorting out like a hose, and like it was scary. Like I thought that only happened in movies. Like it was so like surreal. Like,
Hmm.
and yeah, no, it's crazy. Like,
I think that was the last time. Yes, no. I remember that
no,
phone call.
no,
No way.
it was about in the middle. It was when I was living in Carlton Place.
Okay. There's places
Yeah.
I can't even drive to around here. But so as a parent, it's my job. I accept the role when I gave birth to you that, I would look out for you. I would want a role model for you. I want to be there for you. I want to keep you from getting hurt, and I want to keep you from harm and scary stuff. But now it seems like as parents, we're going so overboard, and they're trying so hard to be your friend and all this. But what do I do as the parent that sees you hurting? Does I love you sink in? Does I'm here sink in? Does just being there holding
I don't.
space? Like, how do I
Okay.
let you know I love you so that you don't get
Might
to the
sound
point
so
of the group
stupid.
home?
Like this might sound so stupid, but I kind of wish in those times that I don't know, I remember one thing. This is when I was staying with dad at that point
Mm-hmm.
when I was like, yeah, and I remember this was probably the most weirdest but helpful thing he ever did when I was like having a breakdown. He I was like, I need to go to the hospital. He was like, no, I'm not going to, because it had been a week where I was at the hospital almost every day. And he was like, no, we're not going to go to the hospital. We're going to try and like, talk it out and like wait it out. And we're going to like,
I lost your sound there, Avery. Sound, check your sound. You muted yourself. Check your sound. Avery, can't hear you. Check your sound. I don't know if you muted
oh,
yourself by mistake. There we
am
go.
I back now? No,
Yeah,
I think
so
it was
start
like a
back at your
glitch.
dad's. Yeah, start back when you're at your dad's, and
Oh
then.
yeah. So dad would it was a day that I was having a really bad night and I wanted to go to the hospital, but we've
Mhm.
been at the hospital almost every day that week. So not in a rude way, he wasn't telling me like, no, you can't go, but he was saying like, no, like let's try to
He
like
was tired
work
of
it
going to the
out and
hospital. Yeah.
like see. Yeah, I think he also was like, like let's see if we can wait this out. Like what happens if we get past like, like the worst part of it. And he asked me where I felt safe in the house, and I said I would feel the safest in like the main level by the piano. So
Hmm.
he made me literally like took all the blankets he could find in the house, and he made me like he called it my little nest. He made me like a little like nest, and I slept there with Buster and Mama Bear, and it helped. And I think like before I fell asleep, like I went downstairs with him, and he made me like a grilled cheese, and we just watched like Netflix. And like I think in that moment when you're so upset, just spending time with your one of your parents, if you like, and just doing something simple like that, like something to distract you, something to switch your mindset, like we did, like we talked about my feelings and stuff first and after, so like that And I just remember waking up the next morning and being like, wow, like I didn't have to go to the hospital. Like I got through that without having to go to the hospital. And
Mhm.
like that felt good. And I wish, I don't know, like I felt like it couldn't happen sometimes because I happened to be a little bit more calm that day. I was just kind of more having a panic attack on me like inside. And but I feel like I wish that I had like not been so like I don't know like wrapped up in my head, and I feel like I would have been able to do that more or express what I needed, like express
So that
that
brings me
help.
to a
Like I
thought.
wasn't.
That's awesome thought, because I remember that story clearly. Like I remember you telling me that then, and I remember, you repeating that a couple times. And now we have weighted blankets, right? There's weighted blankets. There's,
Yeah,
because there's other
I have
days
one in my
where,
closet.
yeah, where if I had tried to hold you, that would have been the last thing you wanted. Is that fair too? Like
Yeah,
it's so hard as a
yes,
parent too.
but I feel like if you would, this might sound weird, but yeah, God, it reminds me that I'm thinking exactly from a scene of the movie 13. But like, there's a scene in this movie where
Yeah.
mom finds out that her daughter's cutting, and the daughter starts to like snap out, and the mom like puts her arms around her and like pulls her sleeve up and like kisses them, and like I was like crying at this point, but literally like the
And
daughter was
make me
like trying
cry.
to pull away, and she was screaming like fuck you, but then like she just started crying, and the mom was hugging her on the floor, and it went from like them like pretty much like, the daughter was like trying to like get out of it, and like I don't know. I just think like that's why I said like sometimes I feel like just like giving your child like the biggest fucking hug you can give them, even if they don't want it. Like they might think they don't want it, but it really helps. Like
So if I'm
I
a
know that my
parent and I've dealt with the system now for a little while, and
yeah.
I'm worried that that turns into something that could be called child abuse. Now that I'm restraining you without permission, right? So how do you, as a mom, I realize
I
now
think
I don't care, but how do you deal with that as a parent?
well I
Because that's
think
a reality. Fair? Is that fair to say that
yeah
that could
no
be?
I think that it some kid I've known kids like that who would probably twist it into that kind of thing, and like I don't even
You do
know
it anyways. Like if I'm the mom,
yeah
I'm
I'll
telling the
just be
moms, dads, uncles, whatever, do it anyways. I'm telling you. But there are,
like just
yeah.
it's just a hug, and that kid is going to see you sooner or later that it was just a hug and that you were doing it for the better, you were doing it to keep them safe.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, like I know it's going to be hard for them to see for maybe even like a while, but like they're going to look back at that one day and be like, I'm grateful for that, like you know what I mean, like instead of like just having a fight or like I don't know, like sometimes I feel like when you're that down, like you just want a hug, and that might sound so stupid. Like when I was 13, I probably would have laughed at hearing that, but like it helps. I don't
It's
know.
worth a try. Is that basically, like, if you had to, we'll wrap this up for the recording part of it, but if you had to give, like, to any kid your age that thinks their parent doesn't care, and I do respect the fact that there are some parents out there that could use a little work, but I've also learned that we're all doing the best we can do with what we have, and for some people are going to bitch all over that, but I didn't know then what I know now. You didn't know then what you know now. we
Yeah.
both we both go backwards. um how do, if you can't go to your parents, do you find somebody? Like, would you tell
If you
somebody?
can't go to your parents, then I think like if your parents are toxic or abusive or just like aren't like the best person that you feel safe going to, I think that you need to have not a friend, but like someone who's a little bit older than you, someone who's like more matured, someone who has more life experience. I think you need to kind of have them as like a parental role in a way. Does that make sense? Like not call them like mom or dad or something, but like I think you need someone there who like when we were having problems, like the group home staff, like that was kind of my like you know what I mean, like
Mm-hmm.
that was my safety net. Like that's who I talked to at those times. Like that's who I dealt with. So I think, and if someone doesn't have that, then I would just highly recommend trying to find a really good counselor, because I've had really good counselors that I felt like I connected with on like an insane level. Like they helped me a lot.
What
So
about a suicide hotline or any of those? Have you ever had to call that?
yes, but I didn't find that it helped a lot. Like I didn't
Okay.
find that it made a very big difference for me. Like sometimes it did. Like sometimes if I was sitting in like like after I had moved out, that I don't know, like maybe those would have helped more when I was living on my own. If
Okay.
I was still going through that kind of problems, but
Would you still recommend it to somebody else as like your
if
top three?
someone
I
does,
didn't let you answer. So your top
yeah,
three
like
things that you would tell a kid to do if they feel like, even if they're self-harming regularly and they're worried that it's going to go too far, or worst case, they want to end their life.
I think then yes, you make that call because even just look up that number. And like that this sounds weird, but one time I went, like I was very upset and I went to go call them. And even just like I looked up their number, I put my phone down and I turned on the TV. And I was like, I'm gonna try and distract myself, and if that doesn't work, I'm gonna call them. And
Okay. I'm going to look up that number just so we can give it on our video here.
yeah,
So
and I don't know, like
is there a kids
if you
hotline, right? There's a kids hotline.
there's a kids hotline, there's a national suicide hotline, um, there's an eating disorder hotline, there's a self-harm hotline. Like you just have to look them up. There's a bunch of
Okay.
different hotlines.
So two other things that you would like telling somebody younger than you, but when you were there, what other things could you suggest that they could try? Like an adult or a figure of authority that can help them. Obviously, that's important. What else is there? Okay,
One
so
thing
here
that
in Canada, you can text 45645 for the suicide prevention and support, or you can call 1-833-456-4566. So that's Crisis Services Canada and suicide support. So sorry, Avery, I interrupted you. Go ahead
okay.
again.
One thing that helped me, it would not help everyone else because you know if you're not feeling super safe, you might not want to go out. But one thing that really helped me when I was in a very dark headspace was going for a walk down a trail or like a quiet place by like and just listening to my favorite music. And I don't know, that was just therapeutic, like walking in nature or like a trail near you or just even like by a forest. Like I just find that so healing. Like
If I'm a
feeling
parent, well, I am a parent, but if I was trying to connect, I see something going on with you and you ask me for space, but I'm really worried you're going to hurt yourself. But you're like, I'm
well
going to go for a walk. How do I deal with that?
I think there should be a time limit if it's not kind of like circumstance. I think there should be a time limit or like a time where you have to check in. Or like say, you know, your kids in their room and they're asking for space and you're worried they're gonna hurt themselves. I think there should be like, you know, okay, well I'm gonna come check on you every this so often.
Okay.
Like
So
you know what
open
I mean?
door
Like I think
policy.
like
Yeah.
it's yeah, like it's it's important to like let them know that they can have like privacy and like stuff that you are worried and you do still want to check on them and stuff like that. And like it could be like freaking every 15 minutes if they want the door closed. But like I think deep down at the end of the day they'll realize that you like, or maybe not at the end of the day, maybe at the end of the fucking year or a couple of years, they'll realize that like you know what, they were doing that because they cared and they were doing that because they could tell I was really upset. You know, if they hadn't done that, like what would I have maybe done? Like I feel like that's things you look back at after and like think about.
So in
Being a
hindsight,
parent,
me stepping into the parent role is exactly what I need to do, even though you may
yeah.
not have loved it then. But as parents, we need to step up into that role, less friendly, more parenty. Is that
Yeah, and I think there is a way to be friendly and parenting at the same time. I just feel like you have to find that balance. Like, you know,
boundaries? Mm-hmm.
yeah, like you have to set up the boundaries. Like you and your kid probably have to set up boundaries for each other and like, you know, respect those. Because if there's no respect, then like you can't really have a relationship with someone.
Right. Okay, Avery. Well, I hope this benefits even just one person. Then I appreciate you
Yeah,
hopping on with me. Plus, we get to hang, which is always great. So,
I think it's really important to talk about this right now too, just because like with COVID, like a lot of people are struggling a lot more than usual, and kids that like relied on like school for like their like what is it their
routine.
like just yeah, or like their routine or like where they just you know they saw their friends, like that was their almost like a coping strategy. Does that make sense?
Right.
Like
Yeah, for
you
sure.
know, like for me
The
even
same
with
as
my kids, like
adults that went to work every day. Right now, the
yeah, like
adults,
going to
yeah, Yeah. They're
And
all
like getting to
together in
talk
the
to that
same
one
house.
teacher,
Yeah.
yep.
Sorry.
And
Go
like
ahead.
getting to talk to that one teacher could have been that kid's highlight of the day. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like that, like, you know, they stayed after class for 5 minutes and talked to them about things that were wrong. Like that could have been what like helped that kid get through the day. You know what I mean? And it's little things like that
Where they
where,
felt worthy, like you said earlier, where they
yeah,
actually felt like they were worth something, because
yeah,
everybody wants to feel three things. They want to feel heard, they want to feel loved, and they want to feel that they're worth it and that they matter. So that's four things. But
yeah,
you matter. I love you. Parents never give up is what came out of you and I together. So
yeah.
we'll carry that forward. So thank you.